Now, welcome to a midweek ramble.
Yes, Laura and I are out of town, so I
And
came
yet
up with
we're
a
here
lovely
at the same
ramble
time.
topic in advance so that we could still bring you something interesting today.
Okay.
I want to talk about the current state and problems with the Disney era Star Wars.
Oh, this is going to require hours.
Well, I wrote down a little list here of little
Okay.
thoughts I had.
Okay, yeah, let's discuss your thoughts.
Okay.
We'll do that. Because
I-
my thoughts
I
could
think,
keep going.
in a way, Disney, when they acquired the titles, when they acquired Star Wars, I think they started out right. Because
You
they
do.
started out by not making a bunch of filler. They started out by setting
Okay,
themselves
okay.
up in Star Wars' future. They started out by going, we're going to make episodes that take place after the existing episodes. We're not immediately jumbling up the stuff in between.
Look at you going half full cup kind of.
Well, that's where they started.
Yeah.
And when
Well,
they
they
got
started-
it, everyone started with a half full cup, I
Well,
thought.
the first big thing that came out was Rebels. And they kind of relaunched Marvel as being the mainline comics. We got the Marvel Star Wars comics started in 2014. Rebels was like 2014. Force Awakens 2015. So they started kind of small.
Right. They set themselves up with, here's a little animated project.
Here's like
Here's
one or
some
two. They had like
movies that
two
might be
comic book
coming.
series. 'Cause
Yeah,
they had like
yeah.
Darth Vader and Star Wars were the first two, and they were kind of back to back attached to each other, and they were fine back in the day. They were pretty good back in the day.
It wasn't too
wasn't
much.
too much. Yeah, it wasn't kind of getting kind of wacky and corny all the time.
What I think our problem is, and I know everyone wants to say Star Wars fatigue now.
Yeah,
I don't believe that's entirely the case because not everyone reads all the comics and the
a
books.
lot of people don't.
Yeah.
The vast majority of
So,
people don't read the books
the
and comics.
fatigue
Or fans, I should
is
say.
weird. It's actually not fatigue in my head. It's in a way it's oversaturated into irrelevancy
Yeah.
because I mean they did it to Marvel too. Honestly.
Well, they did it way more to Marvel than they did to Star Wars.
Oh, Marvel just like, here's a bunch of TV shows. We're going to give you 3 movies a year, 2 movies a year. It's a lot.
Well, that was the plan for Star Wars. If you go back to some early Bob Iger interviews from like 2013 and 14, he was talking about we're going to start with like one movie a year and we'll go from there. With the idea being, can we add more to that one per year kind of rotation? Not can we or should we do less? That wasn't the initial thought.
Right. And obviously too much isn't the right way to do things.
No. Because you have your more casual fan who isn't going to consume it all, and then they're going to kind of start, oh, I missed that one or I skipped that one. Why do I want to go to this one? I'm going to skip this one too. And suddenly you're skipping more than you're actually going to, I think. It stops becoming an event.
Been even arguing against the oversaturation. Marvel did it. Marvel is oversaturated to oblivion.
Yeah.
Star Wars is not, in my opinion.
Not in the same way.
I mean, how many years has it been since we've gotten a movie?
4 years.
Exactly.
4 years, like from right now.
At the most, Disney was hoping for one movie a year.
Yeah.
One.
That was the minimum. They went into that thinking that was going to be the minimum, one a year.
Even the live action series, they try to peter out like 1 or 2. It's
Yeah.
not exactly the train that is going down the tracks like Marvel is. So I don't think it's entirely oversaturated. I don't think it's entirely fatigue. The problem is the quality.
No, I 1,000%, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you could pump out a show, multiple shows a year, multiple movies a year, and if they're all fantastic, you're going to get fatigue eventually, but not to the degree that they have on not that much content, really.
Which is crazy because it's almost the weird way that Marvel is doing this quantity over quality, where they're throwing 8, 9 projects out there, and if one of them's good, they count it as a win.
Yeah, they can count it however they want,
I mean,
but yeah, I think a lot of
Loki,
fans
I think,
are looking
was
at it
a
as a
win.
loss. Yeah. Loki was
last-
probably the best thing they've done in a while. Yeah.
Are the last few movies that came out, I think maybe Guardians of the Galaxy might have been a win for them, and not much else. I mean,
Yeah.
well, of course, Spider-Man always does well.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
everything
Spider-Man
is-
No Way Home was
Yeah.
just a rare gem, a nostalgia gem as well. It had a lot of things going for it.
But then they go crazy over the top with the comics now. And they're just filling in every second of time
Oh, you're
that
talking
isn't in the
Star
movies.
Wars again, yeah.
Of course. I'm trying to keep us to Star Wars as
Yeah.
much as I can. But it's hard to not compare them to Marvel because this is what Disney wanted. Disney wanted big franchises.
They bought it to make as much money as they possibly could.
And Marvel and Star Wars can do that.
Yeah, as I talked
When
about.
they're not making garbage.
Yeah, I talked about it on my channel the other day. Like, this was primarily they bought it to kind of change their image a little bit. They wanted more appealing to boys and young men and old men who are have disposable income and love Star Wars and love Marvel. That was the original intent there. they kind of saw themselves as, the Disney princesses. We got plenty of female fans. Let's move into areas that we can attract more male audiences with.
Well, and part of the big problems that they decided to go with is originally they were establishing themselves outside of George's movies. Yes, they did Rogue One. But when the sequels started to do bad is when they started to go, we need to move backwards instead of forwards because now we need to use nostalgia to get what we want.
It's funny to think where we would be in Star Wars right now if the sequels had been, fantastic. And
because why would they look back?
They would have no reason to. Which I think is the plan. I think the idea was okay, we understand you like all this old stuff. Here's a little bit of Luke, a little bit of Han, a little bit of Leia. Mm-hmm. But we really want you to like these new characters and these new actors because they're young. We can use them again and again. We can move forward. We can make Star Wars our own. I think that was the plan until people didn't like what they did. Well,
and think of it as well, the Mandalorian. They started a live-action series after the end of George Lucas' established canon.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to start fresh, start with actors, move forward in their own time. And then the sequels did bad.
Yeah, they kind of screwed themselves by putting something that was actually good in between or before the sequels, because now we had as the saying goes, all roads lead to the sequels.
Mm-hmm. When things started going bad for them in the sequels, I think that's when they really stopped looking to continue establishing themselves in untapped eras, and then decided we should concentrate on filling the space, which went on to ruin some continuity, such as the comics being overly bloated.
Yeah.
And Kenobi being a canon wrecker and a story that never needed to be told, and then in every interview telling us how we have a story. We wouldn't tell a story if there wasn't a story, but they did. They 100% did that. The story they should have told should have been from the Legends book. That story would have worked in canon.
No, something small, introspective, that isn't galaxy sweeping. Which
it still had its action stuff.
It still did. It's a really good book. It takes place right after Revenge of the Sith, after Obi-Wan shows up on Tatooine and what happens, and it's a good book.
It's kind of him settling into his hermit life.
Yeah, it's kind of him accepting it to a degree. Yeah,
and
there's
really
other good
understanding
characters.
What his purpose is here.
Yeah, and the funny thing is the story. It's not so much about him. There's a lot else going on in that particular book.
Right, he's not even really the main
He's not the main character, no. He's actually not the main character. He's kind of that character that shows up to, deal with these other characters'
He becomes more of a character along the way, but he doesn't start out as the main character. And the story is really fascinating.
It's a great book, yeah.
They decided that fans, we wouldn't want to see that? We had to see
Fans would want to see that.
True.
The casuals, average viewer, probably not so interested. That's the problem.
Because we have to put him together with Vader, and if he's not doing something with Leia or Luke, it's a problem. And I'm surprised Boba Fett or Django Camp. I'm surprised Boba Fett.
Don't tell them what they can't do. No one's ever really gone.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, how come it is that they can do so well in animation over live action?
I don't know, because the funny thing about a lot of the stuff that's been bad with Disney Star Wars is that they use the legacy characters. Mm-hmm. And yet one of the things that was great about, say, Clone Wars was that it used the legacy characters, but it also introduced new characters as well.
Even looking at a newer project, let's look at Tales of the Jedi, the Dooku arc.
Oh, that was great.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, much better than the
They really enhanced his character without going overboard.
Yeah, because it was like a snippet.
It was a snippet. We saw little flashes of his life, what his plans were, what his thoughts were going into things that we do see later down the line.
And Dooku in canon, as far as most people know who, again, don't read the books and comics, which is the majority, there's not a lot to him. He shows up in Attack of the Clones, dies at the start of Revenge of the Sith. He's in Clone Wars quite a bit, but he doesn't get much explored into the character itself there.
Whereas you actually can understand him a little better in that just short.
Yeah, him and Qui-Gon, it was really good.
Even his interactions with Mace are interesting.
No, and killing Yaddle as well. Spoilers, sorry.
All three of the stories they told with him were very interesting, and they added so much depth to a character.
No, I agree.
Without oversaturating him.
Yeah, which would have been better than doing the Count Dooku, story where we have 3 seasons of just trying to make stuff up to make it interesting.
It's just weird that the good that they create within their new canon is totally outweighed by the bad. For every Andor and Rogue One, you get at least 2 projects that aren't going over well.
Yeah, I guess they're about a 2-to-1. I don't know. There's decent stuff there. That's the sad part. Probably 2-to-1.
But here's a good question. Do you think they're going to be able to fix their problems by stopping what they're doing now and just going ahead? And I feel like this is part of what their announcements were at Celebration. And just drop what they're doing now in a way, leave regular time alone, and explore new eras of Star Wars. The High Republic was a huge thing that they wanted to make. They were all into this High Republic, the books and everything, this big project that they did. And now they're making the Acolyte, which I think is a big test for them in that regard of, can we make our own era and make people like it? Can we give you a project in an era that we made? But as a double-edged sword, they set the Acolyte too close to the prequels, in my opinion.
I think they set the High Republic too close to the prequels in general.
Oh, I
think it should have been.
That.
It should have been like Old Republic, a different era from the Old Republic, if you will.
It's almost like they're still too afraid to stand on their own without a direct connection to pre-established work.
Yeah, because you have Yoda and you have a few other Jedi Council characters in the High Republic era.
Well, even with the fact that the Acolyte is set merely 50 years before Episode 1, means you could very well see some familiar faces.
We almost certainly will see some familiar faces.
And I don't want them to use that as a crutch. I want them to establish themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, like, as much as I would just like the story of Plagueis told. Maybe this is what it's going to be. I don't know. But I like the book so much that I'd rather just... Again, you're treading on territory that's been done before. So when you do that, you have to do it better than what was done before. And in my opinion, the Plagueis novel is probably the best book in the old EU. Or at least top 2 or 3 or 4. So there's that problem.
Yeah. Do you think creating new movies in new eras is what'll save them? Or do you think that at this point, they're a lost cause?
No, you have to go to something new. I've keep saying it. Like, you got to go new. And I don't just mean, like, we'll do Rey's Jedi Order 15 years after the sequel. No, I mean,
go... At least it's new.
Yeah, it's new. At least it's new territory entirely.
At least they're not trying to thread the needle and, like, oh, look, we're going to make a new movie set between...
Yeah, well, we're going to make something between 8 and 9 that will make them better, or we're going to do a Clone Wars-esque show between 8 and 9.
Right, at least they're deciding we're going to take us even further out, and with their Dawn of the Jedi, they're going to go further in the other direction.
Way back, yeah.
Because we need to move in a different direction, and that's, I think, how they're going to fix Star Wars eventually.
Well, that's their best chance to. I don't know that it's going to mean they do. Because
they need to establish themselves in Star Wars and not just rely on George.
Which I think is what the sequels were supposed to do. Kind of pass the torch. You kind of try to honor George's legacy, I guess, is what the sequels tried to do.
Yeah, the problem is that they tried to rush it to the theater so fast that they sacrificed the story.
Yeah.
And giving it to Rian Johnson.
Yeah, and then you brought in Rian Johnson for that. And look, I hate to keep going back to this and recycle that old thing and beat the dead horse, but yeah, bringing him in kind of derailed the whole thing. Well, even if you like it, you have to acknowledge, like, that didn't seem to be the trajectory that JJ was setting up. No.
All right, here's my last note that I wrote, because I wrote notes, so we didn't go into blind.
You always write notes, though, so...
So I wrote, not every mistake needs to be fixed in canon. Like, Disney had to make sure, in the Disney era, had to make sure that we knew that Chewie did, in fact, get a medal.
When he already had gotten a medal, technically. But...
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had to make sure...
fixed that before.
Yes, but they had to, like, push it and push it. Like, look, Chewie did get a medal.
Yeah.
Then, when they don't show him hugging Leia when Han dies in the sequels, they kind of had to go back and, like... They acknowledged it,
JJ admitted he screwed that up.
Yes. Then there was the Holdo maneuver, which they had to explain in the next movie. It was a 1 in a million chance. It was astronomical.
They certainly seemed really worried about a 1 in a million chance on the supremacy.
What I think is a challenge, honestly, to movies in general these days, especially franchise movies, is, in 1977, when Star Wars came out, the audience, because, for one, they didn't have the internet, the audience, I don't feel, was as hypercritical as it is now. Chewie's medal... I don't think it was a big deal back in the day. I don't think a lot of people really thought about it.
I think it was more of a meme type thing. I mean, not that people don't like Chewie. No, but I'm just saying, like, even till today, it's funny that they quote unquote corrected that when it was just something like, oh, Chewie didn't get a medal. Like, nobody was really like mad about that. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
But yeah, in today's like more hypercritical society where we can stream things and watch it one frame at a time if we want to really delve into something, it's almost a shame that they feel, and I don't think this should be the case, that every mistake has to be a huge big deal and it has to be fixed.
I don't know that they feel it has to be fixed. I don't know that I
think
totally
they've done
agree with
some
that.
backpedaling, though, on fixing things. Even going back, and I even don't like that they took out Admiral Blue Jeans. I know it's silly,
Well,
but
that was a mistake, though. That was a different type of mistake. That's not a story mistake. That's a technical error. But I don't know, like, because many people believe, I tend to believe, that the Rise of Skywalker is a response to fan backlash to The Last Jedi. Like, oh, you guys didn't like that, so we're going to try to do something that gets us back on course. Mm-hmm. And people liked it even less. Now, I'm not saying you don't listen to fan backlash. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't know. I feel like it's this strange, like, we get to hear so much fan feedback that they don't know what is true and what is false. And it really confuses them, perhaps.
Right, because sometimes the loudest voices are not the majority of the voices.
No, I think that happens a lot. And I'm not saying that means, like, oh, the fans who didn't like the sequels are just a loud, angry minority. I don't know what the truth is. I don't think anybody... It's hard to quantify the internet, right? It's hard to just look at videos and Twitter and or X and all these things and be like, okay, now we have an exact breakdown of how many fans liked it and how many didn't. Even the polls I do. Like, of course, the polls I do are going to reflect my takes a lot of the time, right? Because people who watch me tend to agree with me. So it's very hard, even with all this information, even with all the social media and all the feedback, I think it's very hard to know what fans actually want.
I think the next few years are actually critical for Star Wars in the Disney era because of the fact that this is where they have to prove that they can do this. This is where they've pushed forward, they've jumped to the past, they're trying to establish totally new stuff for themselves, and they have to succeed at it because if they don't, they're just going to be beating a dead horse.
Well, I think it's do or die time. Mm-hmm. I think either the Rey movie is a success, and maybe the Dawn of the Jedi, and these next couple of movies, like, if
even
they
the Acolyte
flop,
needs to be a success because they need to make people want the High Republic.
Well, they need to make people want Star Wars again, to get excited for what's coming. Nobody, virtually nobody, is like just excited for Star Wars. I did the poll the other day talking about that. And I know, again, my audience is going to reflect maybe my less than happiness with Star Wars lately, but they need to bring back that excitement. That, like, oh, Star Wars is coming. Oh, that the new movie is coming. Oh, I'm excited. I want to go see that. I got to see that in the theater. Or, oh, the new season of this is coming. Yeah, I can't wait for that. They don't have that anymore. And that comes from making quality content.
I agree. It's do or die time, Disney.
No, it 100%. These next couple of years are going to dictate whether or not Star Wars is something that, we do keep getting in mass quantity, or something that maybe takes a nice long break.
Which would be a shame, but...
I don't think... Well, not entirely. I think you're still going to get games. They're going to keep doing the books and comics. But, like, in terms of movies and shows, I'm not so sure. I think that could easily go away in the next few years if they keep cranking out duds that nobody's... I mean, why do you keep making it if nobody's watching it and paying for it?
Right.
All right, well, interesting topic. Always appreciate getting your views on Star Wars, because they're not exactly the same as mine.
Good.
No, it is good. I mean, because then we can have interesting discussions, or what I hope are interesting discussions. If you made it this far, you probably found what we were saying somewhat interesting. But for now, that's all we got for this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you think of Disney's predicament here. What do you think they need to do to kind of get the excitement back? Or is it just done? Are people just never going to come back? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.